Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to another episode of Attraction Spice. I'm your host Ari, and here we have so much non-physical fun. We talk about everything from lucid dreaming to out-of-body experiences, even hypnosis. And today we are filming in my studio, and that's because it is getting dark outside and I got covered in mosquito bites in the last recording, and so I decided for this evening I am going to stay inside because I love my beautiful skin, so I'd like to keep it that way. Anyway, so as promised, I'm going to be talking about my experience with my past life regression, and I was lucky enough to have 2 past life regressions, and that's because during my training, me and some compadres decided that we were going to swap and do sessions on each other so we could get more practice. So that's how I ended up with 2 past life regressions. So I'm going to tell you kind of bits and pieces from both of them, and I hope you really enjoy this because I had so much fun, and I'm looking forward to exploring more of what happens to my mind in the deep trance. And I want to see what kind of adventures you guys are having as well. So feel free to message me or drop some notes in the comments, and yeah, let's get into it. So my first past life regression was it was really cool because I got to explore 3 past lives in the same session. So the first one, when I first got into trance, the first image that came to mind was a castle, and I thought, ooh, king of the castle. I must have been like a royal person in my past life. But as the image started to generate and things became more clear, that's when I realized that I was standing outside the castle walls holding a bucket and a mop, and I did not live in the castle, but I did work for the castle. And I was pissed about that. Not from my conscious mind's point of view, but I really didn't like that job. I felt that I was being taken advantage of, and there was somebody who worked in the castle, and he wasn't like the king or anything, but he was like related, so he had some sort of authority over what me and some others were doing, and I really didn't like him. He really abused his power, especially because he knew he wasn't the king, so he was kind of taking advantage of his position. So when I was looking around, I noticed down the road there was like a pub or like a local watering hole, and I really wanted to go there. For some reason, I could tell that was somewhere that I went often. Anyway, so I was a big man. I think I was about 6'4". I had big muscles, hairy arms, big chest, and I was strong. And I knew that doing this whatever work that I was doing for the people in the castle, I was not happy about that. So flash forward, I go to my home, and there I lived with my wife and my son. And my wife, I remember thinking like, wow, she's physically attractive. I love how her breasts look in her shirt that she was wearing. And it's like, if I were to see this woman now in real life, I would not find her attractive, but I could feel my attraction to her during this regression. As this person, I definitely had an attraction to my wife, but there was one thing that really bothered me about her, is that she was so plain in the mind, and I just had this feeling that I wanted more out of life. What I love to do is go into the woods that was behind my house, and I lived kind of like in a little brick house with like a straw roof, and I had a little farm. It was a big farm, but I had like just a couple of animals, and I also tended my farm there as well. And what I like to do on my free time is go into the woods and chop wood and build things out of wood. And that was something that brought me a lot of joy in life. But I felt that I didn't have a lot of time to do this because I was working for the castle. Yeah, so the reason why I really didn't like my wife is because I wanted more out of life. And every time I talked to her about it, she seemed to like not care at all. And she was like really happy just being unhappy, and that was fine for her. So I really felt uneasy in our relationship, and I felt she just didn't understand me, and I really I really just found her so plain that she bored me. So that was the thing. And my son, on the other hand, he was more of an adventurer. He was a leader. He kind of went out of his way and did things on his own, and he was really cool. He was well respected by his friends, and he was just a really cool guy. So I always looked up to him in that way, that he was just so free. But he and I really didn't talk about those things either. Like I wanted to talk about what I felt with him, but he just didn't feel the same way that I felt. He just honestly, he just went out and did what he was feeling instead of me complaining. I also really had it in for that one guy who was in charge of whatever it was that I was doing. And it's not exactly clear to me what it was. I must have been like tending to their animals or something. But anyway, so I had it in for him, and I thought he was a total jerk. And whenever I thought about him, I felt like I wanted to just rub his face in manure. Anyway, so flash forward to the next scene in this regression, and I ended up spitting in his face. And what I expected to happen was that he was, I don't know, gonna fight me or something. But instead, I was dragged off by a bunch of guards, and I was left in a dungeon to rot. So, and nobody came to check on me. Nobody even cared. Nobody even came to say, like, you asshole, you shouldn't spit in the face of the king's nephew or whatever. Really, nobody cared. And I just was left there to rot, and that's how I died in that past life. So, yeah. My practitioner asked my higher self why that particular memory came up, and the reason was that I am in a job right now where I also feel like I've outgrown it, and I really want to expand, and I just don't feel respected and loved in the way that I feel for myself when I'm there. So I have been really feeling a little bit of uneasiness when I'm there, and my higher self knows me so well and warned me, if you do want to leave, which is probably the best idea, what you have to do is leave peacefully. And I know that if, for example, like I got fired, it's not like I'd be dragged off to the dungeon per se, but like there's no point in burning bridges. If anything, in any relationship really, like if things aren't working out, the best thing to do is just to leave it alone and to just leave peacefully. So that was some stellar advice from my higher self, and it was very timely for exactly what I needed to hear. So yeah, so the second past life, as I promised, was actually really cool because I was an Indigenous woman and I had 2 baby boys, and they were adorable. One of them was about maybe like just under a year, and I had a pack and I had him sleeping on my back. And I had a 3-year-old, and so he was able to walk. And so we were walking through this beautiful field with tall grass, and there were wildflowers all around, and it was just such a beautiful scene. And I was so happy with my little boys. So flash forward, we get to go visit the village that I lived at, and I could see my husband, and he was the son of the chief. He was an amazing leader. He was an amazing hunter, an amazing warrior, and he really just truly, truly loved his people, and his people loved him. And that's how we all felt about each other for the most part. But he was just kind of like this amazing leader, and I was so in love with him. And when I had flashed back a little bit farther back into my past, I was a little bit younger living with my tribe. I remember like my aunties and my mom were telling me that I'm gonna meet this guy, and I was like, oh, you know, like not word for word, but I was basically thinking like, who does this prince think he is, you know? But I really didn't want to meet him. I was thinking like, you know, he was probably just like this cocky guy, oh, son of the chief, whatever, you know. But the day that I met him, as soon as I locked eyes with him, I was like, oh my God, he is perfect. And I immediately fell in love with him. And on the day that we met, he took me to this cave that only he knew about. And we had to like scale the wall of this big cliff, and on the underneath side of the cliff we could go sit under the water, and the water would kind of just slightly come in, and we could hear the waves crashing into the cave, and it was just so beautiful and so romantic and just so lovely. And he was just such a gentle spirit, and I fell in love with him immediately. So flash forward a little bit. He was asked by some other men from another tribe to come and help with something, and he's just such a giving and loving person. He was all over it. He wanted to go help, but really they had tricked him, and they wanted to kill him because they were jealous. They were jealous of his power. They were jealous of just the way that he carried himself, and he was just really just an amazing leader, not only for our tribe but for all the tribes around. He was really just kind of like the go-to guy. And so they were jealous of him, and they killed him. And of course I was devastated, but I knew for some reason that his spirit was still alive. So although his physical body was gone, and I mourned that and I missed him in that regard, I was not nearly as sad as you might think, because I knew he was still there. And so I stayed with the tribe that I was with his family, and they treated me like their own, and it was quite beautiful, but nothing really was ever the same after he was gone. There was a scar in our family, and things just weren't the same. But I got old. I remember I had long whitish gray hair. I had a long braid, and I was actually quite old. I lived to an old age, but I decided that I lived all the life that I could, and there was nothing else for me. So I decided to eat some berries, and I lay down and I let the berries do what they did, and I drifted off into the spirit world, and there I met my husband again, and that was the end of that past life. So I asked my higher self, or my practitioner asked for me, what was the point of seeing that life? And my higher self said that I have experienced true love. I know what it feels like to really experience true love. And so up until now, everybody that I've dated, it hasn't come close to the amount of love that I had for this one in that lifetime. And so they did say, like, I can again find true love in this lifetime. But you know, if it's not perfect, like, there's no reason to be sad about throwing it out, because true love is something that I know very well and can experience again. So yeah, that was excellent. That was excellent advice. Shout out higher self for looking out for your girl. And yeah, so that was really nice. And the third past life that I experienced, this one was actually quite interesting, because I was a mermaid, and I had a tail, and it kind of, the way that my tail looked like, it was like it didn't have scales. I wasn't like a fish. I was more like a porpoise. It was like a dolphin tail, like the same color, like a grayish blue, and it was smooth. And I don't remember what my face looked like. I didn't have a chance to actually see my face, but I did remember that I was very, very beautiful, and I was like the leader of my friends. So I had almost like a posse. And I was almost famous for the fact that I hated humans. I really hated humans a lot. The first scene, I was in front of this massive ship, and they were driving through where we lived. And I remember saying that we're gonna trick them some way. We're either gonna poke a hole in the ship, or we're gonna steer them off course, or just fuck with them in some way. So our plan was to do something. And I remember me and my girlfriends, we were doing flips in the water, and I remember saying, like, if I wanted to, I could remove all the water from the sea. And I meant it. I had the power to do that. But I said, but I wouldn't do that. And I actually had aquakinesis, so I could move the water with my hand, kind of like a water bender. And I had the power to, like, actually remove all the water from the sea if I wanted to. And I said, these are my waters. these humans come into the water thinking that these waters are theirs, but these are my waters. But I knew they weren't my waters either. I knew that I was a protector of the water, and that was my job, and that was what I was meant to do. So I wasn't gonna remove all the water from the sea or do anything crazy or start a storm or anything like that. But I was gonna pester the humans. And for the most part, humans couldn't see us. But there were a select few that could. I'll flash forward a little bit. I saw there was this like very old woman who was in a boat. It was like a dinghy, and she was actually able to see me. So she was looking into the water and she could see me. And in that moment, that's when I realized that there were some humans that could see me. Flash forward a little bit again, and it turns out that I had fallen in love with a human man. And I was going to meet him at a dock. And I was gonna swim up and have like a romantic evening with him. But I did not tell my friends where I was going. And I was so embarrassed that I was in love with a human. Even though like I was like the ringleader of like the hate humans club. So I didn't tell anyone where I was going, and I went up to meet him, and when I swam up, I didn't realize, but he was tricking me. So I swam up to see him, and for some reason he had other people there who came up and speared me in the top of my head, and that's how I died in that lifetime. So it was a little bit gruesome, but that's basically the end of that. And my higher self said that the reason that they showed me that particular memory was so that I could remember my powers, and that I do still have, I think I called it aquakinesis before. I think it's called hydrokinesis. I don't know. They didn't call it anything during the past life regression. I actually looked it up later. But yeah, it turns out that I still actually have those powers. And then we asked like, how can I use them? And they said what I have to understand is that me and the water are not separate, and that if I want to actually be able to interact with the water in such a way, I have to just understand that the water and I are one and the same. So it was really cool to find out that I have superpowers, and I am going to be practicing, and that's really exciting. So just to let you guys know, like going through the death scene, like as you know, as scary as it is to think about, you know, being speared in the top of the head, or, you know, like it's really not much different than watching like a movie and seeing someone being killed on screen, where like you can see it and kind of like and vibe with it in the moment, but once the movie is over, you're not thinking about it. So I'm not traumatized by being hung to death, or, you know, by being speared in the head. Like I just understand that those are different lifetimes, and they are memories, but they're not memories that affect me in any way at this time. So if anyone's wondering about, you know, like going through those like gruesome scenes, if that's, you know, if that would be traumatizing or anything, no, it's really not. At the time when you're in the trance, it can be a little bit difficult to deal with, but your practitioner will be able to give you suggestions that you'll be able to watch the scene, and you won't actually have to relive it, and you can watch it as a spectator instead of having to relive it. So that's really important. And yeah, in my second past life regression, I had a wonderful conversation, or well, my practitioner was able to have a wonderful conversation with my higher self. And one of the things that they had said, which was so important, is that I have to start listening to the first thing that comes to my mind when it comes to answering questions. And ever since I've had these two past, actually, what I didn't mention is I actually had an integrated energy therapy session in between my two sessions. So it was like boom, 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 3 healing sessions in a row. And I cannot begin to tell you how much like healing and incredible like I have been feeling. And the amount of energy that I've had to be creative and just like actually reach out and achieve my goals in such a short amount of time is just amazing. So I just have to say that like I am so blessed and so lucky to have been able to experience that. But yeah, I really have been able to connect so much. It was like an open portal now between me and my higher self. And more I'm finding that I don't actually have to be in a deep trance or in a deep meditation to ask for answers. And I'm getting so much more clarity every single day in every single decision. And it really feels like there's just like a conversation going on in my mind. Like whenever I think something, there's always kind of another voice there that has like a higher perspective. So if I'm, like I was walking my dog the other day and I had a bag of poop that I had picked up because I pick up my dog's poop, and I said, I wonder if this bag of poop has consciousness, and the answer came back, yes. And what had come to my understanding is that the bag of poop, it doesn't have the ability to move. It doesn't have the ability to act like a dog or a cat or a human would, but it does have the ability to perceive. And it also has a choice. Understanding, for example, that it is a bag of poo, it has the choice to accept that it can choose whether or not that's a good or a bad thing. And it has a choice to perceive basically its existence as either positive or negative. And it does have just a slight bit of emotion. So if that answers anyone's question, if anybody has been asking that, then that's the answer that I had downloaded. So I thought that was actually pretty interesting. I also realized that in that conversation, there are certain things, like even like the brick on a wall, like it has consciousness, and its ability to act out in the physical world is not quite as much as what we have as humans, but it does have the ability to perceive itself and its environment. We also as humans have the ability to act, but we're also not in control of everything that happens to us. We're not in control of the earth spinning in its orbit. We're not in control of the sun. We're not in control even of other humans. So that just goes to show that like everything is kind of on a spectrum of like capability of action in the physical plane. But we all have the same consciousness where we get to perceive what is positive and what is negative and decide which one we want to believe and subscribe to. So that was the interesting conversation that I had with my higher self the other day when I was picking up my dog's poop. And I don't know, hopefully that was helpful to somebody. And yeah. Anyway, after being in trance and having the higher self speak through me, I am so much more in tune with knowing which one's like my own thoughts and which one is like my guides and my angels. And this voice has the same voice as my own thinking voice, but my mind is kind of having like a back and forth conversation all the time. There's questions and there's answers, and there's questions and there's answers. And it seems that I'm doing most of the questioning and my guides are doing most of the answering. But they're also, asking me to do certain things. It really is a back and forth. It's like a conversation, and it's really beautiful because I never feel alone. I feel that I'm always supported and that there is a greater energy that is out there looking out for me. So my higher self, my guides, and my spirits, they know from me, like, what do you want? Whatever you want to do, they're out there and they're just like putting all the pieces together, and I just have to sit back and relax and enjoy and just trust that they have it all aligned for me. And that is so wonderful. And yeah, so I just feel so much love for myself and my life and just what I'm doing right now, that I'm having the time of my life, and I'm really enjoying being able to talk to constantly this higher energy and have them support me. So yeah, that's my experience with my past life regressions and what came out of it. There are more things, but they're just not at the top of my mind right now that I feel is like the most important thing for me to tell you today. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to DM me, or, you know, write a note in the comments, or I will leave my email also in the description. So if anybody wants to have a past life regression and holistic healing with me, I am so happy to offer my hypnosis sessions. I only offer them in Niagara Falls and the GTA and the surrounding areas. So yeah, because of course we have to do them in person. That's the best way to enjoy this beautiful healing modality. And yeah, I would love to hear any of your stories and any of your questions. I'm really looking forward to connecting with you guys. So I hope you enjoyed my story about my past life regression, and I also hope you have a wonderful day. Peace.